Okay, the say that we're starting this year, I said it's starting with halachas of niske shchenim, which is Siman Kuf Nun Gimel through Kuf Nun Vav, is the first topic that we'll be learning this year. The halachas of niske shchenim, we're going to give an introduction to it and then start the beginning of the Siman. The halachas of niske shchenim, if you want to define them, the niske shchenim will divide into two categories. Two general categories. Number one, using somebody else's property or using a shared property. And number two, a hezek that you caused to somebody else's property by doing something in that person's property. Siman Kuf Nun Gimel focuses mainly on usage of, mainly on the tashmish, on not that you are doing specifically a hezek, but you're using somebody else's property, or you're using shared property. And how do you create a chazaka in this in this scenario? By way of introduction, Siman Kuf Nun Gimel comes as a continuation to another 20 simanim which discuss cheskas metaltal and cheskas karkois. Cheskas karkois is discussed in Siman Kuf Mem onwards. And what's the din of cheskas karkois? If somebody uses somebody else's field for 3 years and you eat the peiros of that field, then you become, and the bailim were not moiche, and the machzik has a taina. That means it has to be chazaka sheyeshim a taina. You know all this from learning Gemara in yeshiva. What the taina could be, you bought it, you received it as a present, there was a mechila with a kinyan, or whatever chazaka's work over there, then the karka changes ownership from the person who originally owned it to the person who now used to be, seemed like a squatter, but not really is a squatter because he has a taina together with it. But if you don't have a taina, you have a chazaka without a taina, it's nothing. Why? Because you could say in the karka, you could say I wasn't moiche, because the fact that you want to use it, that might have no problem with it. But to claim ownership, that's something else. I don't care, I'm not eating peaches. You went and you ate my peaches, that's totally fine with me. You took care of my trees, I'm very happy with it. That doesn't mean it became yours. There was no taina, and there was no, that's why I wasn't moiche. Over here we're talking about the chazaka for usage. And even in usage, there are certain things which create a transfer of ownership of property, and those are going to be defined in the categories of cheskas karkois, really. And there are certain usages which do not create any transfer of property, and those are going to be defined in the category of cheskas tashmishim. And over here you have a big machlokes, which parts of it you'll see in the beginning of the Siman, in Bes Yosef, in the Tur. What kind of chazaka do you need? Do you need 3 years? Is it enough that he saw it once and wasn't moiche? What is considered la'alter? Do you need a taina with the chazaka or not? I'm going to go through shortly with the shittas harishonim, then we're going to go into Vaita. The first shitta is the shitta of the Rambam, which is, you see it in Hilchos Shchenim, in Perik Zayin, in Perik Ches, in Perik Yud Aleph, the Shittas HaGeonim, which is brought in Tur in the next, further down, the Rimigash, the Ramban, the Yad Roma, the Rivosh, and the Meiri. All of them, the Meiri obviously holds like the Rambam usually, so when you say Rambam and you say Meiri, it's usually the same opinion, that you don't need 3 years for Cheskas Tashmishim, or even Cheskas Nezakin. The moment the person sees the other person using his property and he recognizes that the damage is going to occur, and it's very crucial that he could be niskoi, he recognizes, and then we're going, that's what la'alter doesn't mean the moment that it happens, and we're going to soon see it how it is in Shulchan Aruch, and he was not moiche, that is automatically considered a mechila. The moment it's considered a mechila, then the Baal HaChatzer can no longer claim that he does not allow it, and it becomes the rights of the person who who's using it to be able to continuously do it. He can't even stop him from doing the same damage going further, as long as it is the same damage, because he recognized it, he saw it, he agreed to it, he was moichel, and that was it. the Ravid in Perek Ches in Rambam, there are those that understand in the Shit of the Ravid that the Chazakah only allows for that he doesn't that the user doesn't have to stop. But the owner, if he sees damage, he could stop him from doing it, but that's not how the majority of the ones that follow Shit of the Rambam hold.
So the Ravid basically says Tashmish could be kain al altar, but not nezek?
Tashmish could be kain al altar, and nezek could also be kain al altar, but the kinyan only refers to that it's on you, the user has reshus to continue doing it. The chazakah means that you are able to continue doing it but the person could stop you if there's a hezek over there. So if there is, that means that the chazakah never becomes a complete chazakah, that you could continue doing damages as long as you want. There's some that understand that to create a new category over here, that the chazakah never really takes forth for damage that you could continue creating damage to somebody else. So it's cheskas tashmishin, yeah. Cheskas ezekis, you have a right to be mazik as long as the guy is not moicha. But a person could wake up one day down the line and say, I'm not interested anymore in you being mazik, and stop the hezek. What is the reason for the difference between cheskas tashmishim and cheskas karkois? There's a ktsas in Siman Kuf Nun Gimel, the Siman we're learning in Sifkat Nun Gimel. The chazakah that we're talking about over here is not a chazakah which creates ownership. It's not a chazakah which creates a kinyan. Why? Because a kinyan is an action, not a lack of action, and therefore the fact that there's a mechila is sachaka, lack of action. Moiche, not being moiche, is a lack of action. That doesn't effectuate the kinyan. Rather, all it does is that it creates a chazakah which allows usage. But again, that's how the Ktsas explains, and that's how it seems like to match up with the Ravid on this. That's the first shitta. Second shitta is Rabbeinu Tam, Tosfos, the Rosh, the Rivosh in the name of Chachmei Tzorfas, the Balamoy, Rabbeinu Yoina, the Rashba, that non-mechoe doesn't become mechila at all, and therefore a chazakah has to be 3 years of using this specific usage that is being done right now. That means not the mere fact that I'm using it. There could be that one day for 3 years I'm using it to hang up my laundry, and then I'm going to come and say that allows me to make parties in your backyard. That's a different kind of tashmish, a different kind of usage. And there is a taina together with it. It means a total opposite end of the spectrum. You have to have also a taina with it. A taina is a mechire, a taina of matane, and there's a kinyan or a shtar, a chazaka, or a clear mechile that's there. Or there is the Marit adds, there's a umdin or the muchach, that this kind of not being moiche was a clear mechila and not just a lack of not just a lack of action, but a lack of action which is essentially an action of mechila.
After 3 years?
After 3 years, you have to do for three years.
They hold it has to be 3 years
plus a taina.
You mentioned that there has to be some sort of like a shtar or something, or just a taina that he sold it or gave him a taina.
He has to taina that he has to taina that, and he has to say how he got it.
But there's no actual shtar.
No, he said no. We don't have a shtar. That's what the chazak is. You don't have to hold a shtar for 3 years. But his taina is, you sold it to me with a kinyan, you sold it to me with a shtar, you sold it to me by your word, and the fact is, you gave me the rights for just like by karkas, right? That means not that you create ownership again. There's no ownership being created. You sold me the rights to use it. You gave me as a present the rights to use it. There was a shtar to it, and that's why I don't have to hold a shtar after 3 years. Interestingly, this Maharit was quoted in the Ktsas and Siman Kuf Mem Tes regarding Cheskas Karkois, And over there, the Ktsah says that he learns from it that if a person was moiche only on certain kinds of ezekas, not on all kinds of ezekas, that means during the 3 years, based on what's the umdina de muchach, what's an example of umdina de muchach? A person is using his neighbor's property for certain things, and certain things he was not moiche, certain things he was moiche. That is a very clear umdina that his mechile on the things he was not moiche is an intentional mechila, not just a lack of action. The fact that he lets the kids play around in the backyard, in his backyard, he doesn't say anything, but when the guy puts up makes a party and has the people throwing garbage in his backyard, he is moiche. So you know that the mechila was for usage when you clean up after yourself and not make noise at night. But if you do something in action which is different, so what is he koine? It's a mechila which is a taina. After 3 years, you have the rights to continue doing those things which there was no mecha in it. That's the second shitta. That's totally the other extreme, that you need a chazakeh, 3 years, you don't change, nothing changes till the end of the 3 years, and you need a taina.
Is the Ktsah saying you need to have him be mecha on some things, on others?
No, he uses an example. It's an example of what's a umdana. When do you say, he uses an example, if a person was moiche only partially, Ktsah says, a person was moiche only partially, only on certain ezekas, not on the rest of the ezekas, what does that qualify as? So he says,
Even less than 3 years?
no, 3 years, 3 years. He says that qualifies, that he brings the Marit, that qualifies as the umdana de muchach that the Marit requires to have a proof to the Bezdin that you need to have that there was a actual act of mechila. This is an example of it. He was meichel on the things he was not meiche. No mecha on specific things, and mecha on other ones is a clear act of mechila for the things he did not do any mecha about. The third shitta is the Rashbam, that it depends what kind of damage you do, what kind of usage you're doing. He differentiates between cheskas tashmishin and cheskas tashmishin that does not create a damage to the karka, and cheskas tashmishin that does create a damage to the karka. If cheskas tashmishin that does create a damage to the karka, for example, if the wall is solid and you open up a window over there, which now prevents that the person should not be able to do the things he used to be able to do in his backyard. If a person has a backyard which is completely fenced in and there is a pool over there, so certain people could go to the pool, they don't have to worry about people looking. Now you open a window, you just created a chisaron, a damage to the actual property of the other person. It's not that the earth now you could measure a damage in the earth and the earth became weaker, but it's a chisaron, and it creates some form of actual damage. Or that you put a gutter that's spilling into your neighbor's marzev, that's a gutter. The gutters are spilling into your neighbor's backyard. That creates a hezek. He says for these ezekis, you have to have, being that these kinds of ezekis are big ezekis, for which usually there is a signed contract to allow one person to do such a thing in somebody else's property. On such a thing, you need a chazakeh, 3 years, plus a taina or a shtar. But anything which is a small use, sticking a kaira in or something which doesn't create real chisaron in it, that doesn't create any chisaron in the karka, any problem in the karka, you don't need 3 years. Rather, the chazakah becomes, he takes a middle approach, rather the chazakah becomes right away la'alter the moment he recognizes what it is. However, he adds, not like the Rambam, you do need a taina. So he takes a middle approach between the two. You do need a taina. If it's something small, you don't need 3 years, it's la'alter with a taina. But something big needs 3 years with a taina. And if you look in there's a machlekes about putting a ladder in the סימן, the shach of a machlekes. You're going to later see if putting a ladder is considered a small hezek or a big hezek. Does it fall into the category that you need to have 3 years, or according to the Rashbam, or not. The fourth shitta is the Rivam. The Rivam says you always need 3 years, but you don't need a taina. And the Rashash on this, because this is all the Rivam and the Gemara in Baba Basra. The Rivam is in Taisus and Baba Basra. So the Rashash over there points out something very interesting. He says, based on the Rivam, we could flip it the other way. If you have a taina, you don't need 3 years, according to the Rivam. So it's either or. That's how the Rashash understands the Rivam. And the fifth shitta,
Show up in a place for one day, just say the guy sold to me and you're good.
if what?
If you need a time and you don't need 3 years, then you don't need anything. Just say, he gave it to me.
No, but it's the hikir beniska and everything else. It's the altar doesn't mean the moment that you show up over there. You'll see later. The altar could be, the altar we're going to get to it later, but the altar, if you want, whoever was here knows it. I like quoting the Chazon Ish. He says 30 days. But that's the altar. And there's other ones, how much it really is. If a guy's out of town for the whole summer, the 30 days don't click, or anything. That doesn't count. If a person's out of town, you could be machzik as much as you want in the guy's property. If he doesn't have camera, if he has cameras, they'll call the cops on you. The fact is you're lucky he doesn't have any cameras, so it doesn't mean you became a chazak on it. There's another shitta in Taisus Shabbos Yosef brings that you don't need 3 years, what you need a taina. That means they like the way the Rashash explains the Rivam, but the Shabbos Yosef says that's a shitta of Taisus. The Poiskim only, you're going to see in Shulchan Aruch, they only took the two extremes, the first and the second shitta. The one that you don't need a chazaka or a taina, just hikir beniskay, and the second shitta that you need a chazaka with a taina. And the machlekes can only become what's considered a taina and what's considered hikir beniskay. But otherwise, the two shittas that are going to be, the Mechaber takes, in Shulchan Aruch, takes the shitta of the Rambam, and the Ramah takes the shitta of we'll call it the shitta of Rabbeinu Tam, even though each one has a bunch of people that come along with it. Now let's go and discuss Bichlal, this whole idea that someone could use somebody else's property. According to halacha, it's asur for a person to use somebody else's property. Not only his chatzar, also the air above his chatzar, without his reshus. And if you used it, you're a gazlan. And even if you have in mind to be mazik with intention to pay. Comes a shaila, what happens if the neighbor is a goy? So if you look in Hilchas Pesach of the Alter Rebbe and Sifkot in Siman Tov Mem, in Kuntra Sachin Sifkot and Yud Aleph, over there you have an interesting Kuntra Sachin that discusses about Chometz. A goy was mafkid Chometz by Yid, and the Yid is allowed to sell it to another Yid. And over there, that's what is discussed in Shulchan Aruch and Alter Rebbe. Over there explains in Kuntra Sachin, how can you sell the Chometz to another Yid, to another goy? The goy was mafkid Chometz by you, or even burn the goy's Chometz. Mishum de gzelas hanochri ein bo isur elaim ki niskaven legozlei mamish al mnas sheloi lahachzid mei gzela. Gzelas nochri is only an isur when the intention is to steal from him and not to pay him back. But if he wants to pay the guy back, steal and pay from him, not over on the issur of loisigzel, of stealing from a guy, but you would be technically over on the issur of loisachmoid, conceptually. But be'etzem loisachmoid doesn't apply to a guy either, because loisachmoid beis re'echa applies to a yid. Right, so over here, when it comes to a guy, we see that if you steal with him, if you use a guy's property, with the intention of paying him for doing it, then you don't have the issue of gzela. And since you don't have leisachmoid, the issue of technical leisachmoid by a guy, even though Alter Rebbe says it's leisachmoid applies over there, it's hard to understand how leisachmoid will apply by a guy when it's re'echa. So we must say that Alter Rebbe says conceptually there's a concept of leisachmoid, but midiraisa there isn't such a thing. So there's no issue by a goy. But from that, you could infer, when it comes to a yid, if somebody needs a raya from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that you're not allowed to steal from a yid, even if you intend to pay him back, you have a raya from the Kuntas Achron. In Choshen Mishpat also, if you're planning if you're using it with the intention of paying him, it's still considered the issue of a six. We're going to get to it in Hilchos Sheila and Sifei. We're going to get to it in a minute from the Alter Rebbe in the next place.
The case out there is talking about is because it's Pesach, now you have to sell it, you have to burn it?
You have to burn it. You are now over an Isser. In Shuras Shai, Chelik Aleph Siman Shin Yud Ches, he Bechlal doesn't go so extreme. He says you could l'chatchila use something which belongs to a guy. That's one extreme. The Magen Avraham and Tafesh Lamed Zayin takes the opposite extreme, and that you're completely not allowed to Hilchos Sukkah. What's the raya since we're getting close to Sukkah? So over there it says that if in Reshus Harabim, the Magen Avraham says you can't build a Sukkah in Reshus Harabim that Goyim have a part in it because it's stealing from a Goy. So it doesn't give the example that you're planning on paying him or anything of the sort. Now that is if you're going to create a hezek to him, right? Well, you're not going to pay back? Yeah, if you want to match it, yeah. If it's clear that you're not going to cause any hezek to your neighbor by using his property, then it's mutter. Why? Because then it's el chaser. And if the other person is preventing you from doing it, it's midas daim. Comes to a shayla if you could be koifer on midas daim or not. If you look in Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Sheila Seif Hey, the Alter Rebbe says that if it's something which has absolutely no damage and no loss, you are allowed to use somebody else's property, but the Alter Rebbe says only if kol bnei adam, if everybody are not makpid on such a thing, on such a use. If everybody's not makpid, then you could also do it without asking. But if you know that there are certain people that are makpid, this might be not really a hezek, but something over there, some kind of kilkul, and you know some people are makpid on it, then you must get reshus beforehand, and if you don't, you're a gazlan. And we don't go after roiv when it comes to these halachas. Rather, if you know that some people, there's a miut which is makpid, you have to make sure to ask. Why is that? Because shoyel shalei midas abaylim is a gazlan, even if he's not eine mekalkel klal. That's the lashon of the Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Sheila. The Alter Rebbe over there sends you to Hilchos Metziu Pekadon Seif Samaches. Over there, the Alter Rebbe is talking about a pekadon, something which was a pekadon in your property. Someone gave you a pekadon that's not money, because money, someone gave you a pekadon which is not money, and you want to use it and pay for it. It's asur. Why? It's considered shlichus yad. Shlichus yad in the pekadon, even if your intention is not to steal, and if you used it and didn't cause any damage, it's not considered shlichus yad. Shlichus yad is only when you cause damage. So if you use it and didn't cause any damage, it's not shlichus yad, but rather shoyel shalei midas abaylim is a gazlan. The only exception is if everybody, again the same din, everybody's not makpid on this kind of usage, and if some people are makpid on it, the Lashon Alter Rebbe Tashmish k'tzas me'od makpidin olav v'pnei chashash kilkul, even if it's a chashash rochaik, it's asur. Because of the din of shoyel shalei midas, which is considered a gazlan. Even if it's bari loy, even if the person is clear to him that he's not going to cause any damage, still he's not allowed to do any damage. Unless you know that the mafkid will have absolutely no problem whatsoever with it, and therefore you have to confirm it with him. So therefore, if you want to use somebody else's property without reshus, so either if the owner tells you it's not a problem, which is what we're trying to do over here with Cheskas, Tashmishim, and this Siman, or you know that everybody's not makpid on such a thing. That depends on this. Now, what if
people that are makpid, they're only makpid because of being stingy or whatever?
That's midas doim.
But the farther people that are makpid,
that you have to wait for a bezin to be kaifel midas doim. The guy's ever in the Isser, just because he's ever in the Isser doesn't mean you could be ever in the Isser also. There's no Isser for you, But if he is makpid because of some kind of damage,
There's no damage.
or if there's no damage whatsoever, then he's over the midas daim, and you're not gonna get a isser. You're not gonna get a isser for it. Okay, so now this is pretty much the general introduction to Siman Kuf Nun Gimel. The concepts that are going to come up in the whole Siman Kuf Nun Gimel, I'm going to go through now in Seif Aleph and Seif Beis. Yeah?
Is that another chasser? That is not exactly because of the cousin of the Alter?
No, because Pikadon of the Alter Rebbe says only if you know that everybody's not makpid on it. He's talking about Sfarim, Lamashal. If we know that everybody's not makpid on using a specific sefer, then it's not a problem.
But if he is not, because even that another chasser, it's a problem.
Unless you go to the Shus. Or you go to Bezdin and you kaif al midas daim. Yeah. Now, Siman Kuf Nun Gimel, the first 5 seifim are talking about someone who's putting a ziz that sticks out from his reshus into somebody else's reshus. And with this, we could say that maskif and siyum laschala, what we learned last year in the Chesedovim, we discussed it. So now we're moving on to something which is also the first concept of ziz is discussed in Hil Chesedovim. Sif Aleph, the Mechaber begins, if somebody wants to take a ziz out of his property into the air, to be sticking out on top of the air of his friend's chatzir, so the owner of the chatzir could block him from doing it. Why? The Mechaber says the reason, because mazikoi b're'iyah. Why is it mazikoi b're'iyah? You're going to hang things up over there. You're going to have to go in and hang things up over there. When you're going to hang things up on the ziz, you're going to be looking at what the guy's doing in his backyard. Even if the guy's going to tell you, I'm not looking, I'm walking with my back towards you, it still has a kriya. Therefore, he could block him. Now, it's very important, if you medayek in each word of the Shulchan Aruch, first of all is sharei mazikoi. He's causing him, the taking out the ziz is causing a hezek to the neighbor, right? That's one of the things we mentioned before. If it's not causing any hezek whatsoever, it's a different din. Why is this? What kind of hezek over here? The Mechaber uses the reason of hezek re'iyah. If he's not mazik at all, we're back to Zenan Zil Chaser. That's the first reason, the reason of the Mechaber. The second reason that there is, that's the reason that Rabbeinu Yoina and the Meiri, and you could be Medayik maybe from the Mechaber also later on, that's the second reason. That if you're going to take out the ziz, which has more than just a tiny thing sticking out, more than just a hook sticking out, but the actual ziz, tefach al tefach, and you're going to leave it there for 3 years or whatever, as you're going to be machzik, that ziz. So even if there's no hezek right now, could create a hezek down the line if the person is going to want to build over there. If a person's property line is all the way till the wall, and there is no space between your property and the next person's property, and you're going to hang up a ziz over there, and the person's going to want to, and you're going to be machzik, that becomes your ziz. Now I'm going to want to build down the line, or if I decide to become a developer and take down my house and build all the way to the wall and put up a building over there, then, and it's a chatzir which is made to be built, not a chatzir that's plowed, then you're causing me a hezek. The hezek is that even that I'm going to be able, so that even though it seems that it's midas doim and then the chatzir, because the ziz is not causing any real damage to you, the fact is it is causing, according to Rabbeinu Yoina, that is also a damage. The fact that a chatzir, which is made for the purpose of buildings, if we're talking about in a regular city block and there's an empty lot between 2 houses, and the lot goes all the way, the lot line is right away by the wall, if you're going to put it as is, you're creating a damage to the person next to you. What would be the example of taking out the ziz into your neighbor's airspace that could go according to this second shita will be a hezek, and according to the second reason, and according to the third reason, which we're going to get to soon, sticking air conditioner out through the wall. You don't have a window there. But you stick an air conditioner out through the wall, the air conditioner sticks out more than a tefach, usually. A big one will stick out more than a tefach. And then you're going to be machzik over there. If the guy's not going to be moiche, there's no hezek kriya. but there is a hezek that I'm not going to be able to build over there because I just cut open in my property, and you weren't moiche. Air conditioner needs to have a free flow of air coming through it. Therefore, I created a problem by doing it. And if you were not moiche, that's already the owner of the air conditioner is machzik. And the third reason is brought in Tosfos is that it's going to cause water damage. This also applies to an air conditioner, maybe. If you have a ziz, which is a tefach, yeah, you could hang something on there. You're going to put a flower pot over there or something. Then you're going to water your plants, and the water is going to drip down into the person under it. In those days, lav dafka, that it could cause damage if you look on earth that's sitting under flower pots that are hanging, or earth that's sitting where air conditioner drips. You're going to see that the earth is softer over there. And it's like, you might see the drip marks over there also. And therefore, that's the reason why the owner has a right to be ma'akev. Because the way we're looking at it is, could the owner be ma'akev? When could the owner be ma'akev? And if he wasn't ma'akev, why the chazaka happens? Yep, the third reason is because of the water. If you look in the Nesivis in Sifkot and Hey, it says that he says that the Mechaber, by the fact that the Mechaber specifically says Mazikui Biri'iyah, this is in the Nesivis in Sifkot and Hey, it's specific that the Mechaber only holds that it's an issue only when there is Hezekriya. If the Mechaber would hold that it's other Hezekas, like Hezek of construction, like Rabbeinu Yonah, or Hezek of something falling like Tosfos, then he would mention Shemazikoi. The fact is, he's saying Shemazikoi B'Re'iyah. Therefore, only Hezekriya is a problem, not a different Hezek. But if you look in Shach and Sifkot and Beis, you see that the Shach does hold that he paskins like Tosfos, and therefore, what will be an interesting nafkamina between the shittas, except for the air conditioner, which is no Hezekriya in the air conditioner. Another.
Himself like Tosfos, or says the Mechaber is paskin?
It says Mechaber paskin like Tosfos. And according to that, the interesting nafkamina when you want to put bars. You want to put bars on your windows, but not the regular bars that are standing straight. If you see some people in warmer places, you have bars that go outwards. You could put plants over there. In places where, I don't know, I didn't see it too much in New York, but it's other places, more common, warmer places, that people have all their plants growing outside. So you have these bars which are shaped like this, and then you put the plants over there. So I want to take the plants out over there in these places. So now, if it's only mitzad Hezekriya, Hezekriya is gone already. The fact is I have a window there. So the Hezekriya has always been there. I'm not creating a new Hezekriya. So according to the Mechaber, it's Bechal not a problem. According to the way the Ketzos understands the Mechaber. According to the Tosfos, it could become a problem. A big problem. Because if you're going to have a flower pot that's going to get knocked over from something, or you're going to water it, or something's going to fall over there, you're going to have a problem. Because you're damaging the person under your property. And according to Rabbeinu Yonah, it will only be if it prevents him from building. So putting out a flower plant outside your window could be totally in how you understand. If you look at the Pashas and the Mechaber, the fact that there's already a window there is very important to remember that since there's no Hezekriya, a lot of these things are not going to be a problem. Even to use it on top of use somebody else's airspace when there's no Hezekriya anymore is much less of a problem. So sticking out an air conditioner through a wall is not going to be a problem according to Mechaber because there's no Hezekriya, you're not looking at anything. And if there's already a window and you're putting an air conditioner, there's also not a Hezekriya because the window's already there. Nothing has changed from before.
So, second, I think that if I hold a Mechaber according to the Shlichus, I could put out a kitchen and the guy tells me he doesn't want it because he wants to build it. I can't do anything about it. If he wants a kitchen, he could not.
No, it could be Moicha. Sure, it could be Moicha, yeah. Sure, it could be Moicha. The question is, are you allowed to,
There's no Re'iyah. According to the Nesivis, only if there's a Re'iyah. The fact he wants to build there maybe one day or even now is not a reason to be Moicha.
But then he could be Moicha now, and then he can't stop him until he wants to build over there. You're taking away my land. He's just going to prevent the chazaka from kicking in for that purpose. So he can't tell him, put your air conditioner back in. You could tell him, I'm going to build in 5 years, in 10 years from now, or in 1 year from now, you're going to have to take your air conditioner out. I'm just making it clear in front of Bezdin that you don't have a right. I can't prevent you from keeping the air conditioner over there while I'm not building. But by the way, a lot of court cases and a lot of dentatas do happen regarding air rights. Air rights, especially in tight places like New York, is something which is argued about.
What's the reason for the mechaber and mechalik if you don't agree with any other kind of hezek?
That's the shit they.
Why is water less legitimate than hezek?
Depends on what kind of weather. You put a whole gutter into there. It's a different kind of hezek. It's not the hezek tashmishim. It's mazika. That's a separate. Yeah, that little bit of water is not a problem. The other thing, according to the mechaber, since it's hezekriya only, so that would apply even if you're not attached directly to the other person's wall. Even if you do have 2 feet gap between your property and his property. If there's no window on that wall of your house and you open a window, you're creating hezekriya. If you stick a ziz out over there and you're going to start walking on that side of your house that you never walked in before, it also creates a hezekriya. So the hezekriya, according to the mechaber, taking out a ziz would be only, with l'cha'ira, you could say that the hezekriya element would even apply if you're doing it only in your own chatzar. That's what the Nesivis in Sivkot Nalef understands it. But if you're going to look in Piskei Harid and in the Rashbam, which they discuss this topic, and you could be medayik from the mechaber fakert also, it only applies taking out the ziz only if it's in the other person's property. Because if you look in the lashon of mechaber, it's chatzar chaveiroi, not chatzeroi shaloi. So hezekriya is a different discussion, but take out the ziz could be a shaila to chatzar chaveiroi. What it means, the air of chatzar chaveiroi. Does that mean that you're going to go through your neighbor's property, or it's going to be open towards your neighbor's property, or what exactly does it mean over there? Because it's according to the Nesivis, and the way the Pesach Tshuva also understands the Ma'arit, it's even in your own chatzar, because the Mechaber says mazika b're'iyah. And according to the Rashbam and the Piskei Harid, it's only if it goes into the other person's property. Like I mentioned, the air conditioners is not only the fact that you block somebody else's property, it's also dripping away. The same thing would be if you want to put security cameras around your house, and you put security cameras on that wall also, or the lights that turn on when there's people marching around over there, floodlights, all these kinds of things could all become shilas of hezekriya, could all become shilas of you installing something that could block somebody else from building over there. The air conditioners could create actual damage of dripping. A camera does not create damage of dripping, and neither does a floodlight, but it does create other kinds of damages.
Would the camera be more like a chalain? Wouldn't the camera be
more like a chalain? Yeah. So yeah, but that's a separate. Let's say you don't have the issue of chalain because the guy doesn't live there. You don't have the hezekriya issue. All you have is that he's planning on building over there. Your camera is sticking out a half a foot out. You just took away from him a half a foot that he could have built up to the wall.
This should have been a copper. So we're saying dafka.
Hezekriya. If there's no hezekriya, you can't be makiv.
It's not a shot that he's holding out. I can take a pipe from my house and have it gushing water into your chutzner.
No, that's a different kind of hezek. It's not the.
What is that category?
That's in a different Siman Shulchan Aruch. If I put salt next to your foundations.
So what's this machlekes between the Nesivis and the Shach, whether the Mechaber holds like Taisus or not? Taisus is talking about when there's actual damage to the karka. Water is dripping down and ruining the
could drip down to the karka. Not that I actually yes, that I put a plant over there and the plant could drip down. Because if I actually put a hose and it's actually dripping, it's like something else. Yeah.
Yeah. So the air conditioner's like that, like this is.
No, air conditioner's dripping a little bit. It's dripping a little bit lav dafka, so maybe it could take a long time till it causes damage. Because I'm thinking, I don't know, unless you have the big units and you have a steady flow of water going out. And if you don't have any kind of hezek, then the Baal HaChatzer has no right to be ma'akev. Mitzad midas daim. You have no right to be ma'akev something if there's no mitzad midas daim, koifen al midas daim. And if you look in Ktsas and סימן Daled, he says that logically, if not for midas daim, you would be able to be ma'akev. It's a chiddush and you can't be ma'akev because of midas daim. Not that you're allowed to do everything unless you cause hezek. Really, you're not allowed to do anything in somebody else's property. Elamai, there's a special cutout for midas daim that the Chachamim put over there, that if there's midas daim, they blocked you from being ma'akev. Rather than looking at it the other way, that I'm allowed to do whatever I want unless I cause damage. And what does la'akev mean? What does it mean that he could block him? La'akev on the person who did it. First of all, if you see him planning on doing construction, you could tell him, I don't let you do it. And if he anyways goes and does it, you could force him to remove it. Take him to Bezin, say, I was moiche. Go now and remove it. It's not my responsibility that you just stuck that out and you just lost, you went and I told you not to install your air conditioner units on that side. You paid $3,000 to put them on that side. Now you're going to have to move them all to the other side and drill holes. Not my problem. Patch up the holes. And if the person does not want to remove it, there's a concept of Ovid in Nafshay. A person, since Mispat right in the beginning in סימן the person is allowed to take the law to his own hands in certain scenarios. And this is one of those scenarios where a person can take law into his own hands and remove this thing that's causing damage. There's a very interesting meiri in Baba Metzia Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Beis, which says that if the mazik is a Talmud Chacham, don't remove it without his reshus because he's probably going to be a tzayas dinner, and therefore take him to Bezdin and he's going to do it. And he's going to do it himself. You don't have to take law into your own hands. Because taking law into your own hands is only if it's a person is not tzayas dinner.
You take law into your own hands if it causes damage, like if you're taking out the air conditioner, it's holes in his walls, or damage the air conditioner.
I told you not to put the air conditioner there. I'm telling you, take it off. You're not interested in taking it off. I'll get somebody to take it off myself. It's your problem, not mine.
So you don't have to go to the basement first.
Huh?
You don't have
Really,
to
you
first
sure?
go to the basement,
But obviously, it's much better to do that.
right? I mean, it's better to take a stick and smash whatever you put there.
If it's going to take a long time, yeah. The person's going to start dragging around. Yeah, you have a camera sticking facing your backyard. Yeah, you climb with a ladder and knock it out.
So there's a ton of help when you damage everything, you'd be higher for those damages because he's tzayas in us.
No, you're not chayiv. He's just telling you. The Meiri says he's for sure going to be tzayis din. So go to Bezdin. Don't worry about it. He's going to go to Bezdin and go listen. Now, the Ramah comes and adds, and it's important if you learn the Ramah and Sif Aleph, you're not going to understand until you learn the Ramah and Sif Beis, because the Ramah brings the shittas of the you need a chazaka of 3 years with a taina in the next Sif. But over here, the Ramah says that as long as and the Ramah over here adds, as long as he didn't remove it, that means he was moiche. He was moiche during the 3 years, and the Baal Aziz did not remove it. Then the Baal Aziz cannot use it, or even during the 3 years, even without mecha. Yeah, Lav Dafka, you could use it as a shayla if you could use it something before a chazaka, exactly how you use it. But he says until if you were moiche, the Ramah says if the owner was moiche and the Baal Aziz did not remove it yet, the Baal Aziz has no right to use it because there's a mecha against it. But the owner of the chatzar could use it. He could go ahead and use it, and he could prevent the Baal Aziz from going into his chatzar and using it. And but after there's already a chazaka of 3 years with a taina that we're going to see in the next sif, then Baal Aziz could prevent the Baal chatzar from using it. That's according to the Ramah during the 3 years. According to the Mechaber, what does it mean? It means that if the Baal chatzar was moiche right away, within the time frame that he's allowed to, not the 3 years, but the much shorter time frame before La'alter, then Baal Aziz cannot use it, and Baal HaChatzer could use it. According to another thing is the Machlokes in the Mechaber and the Ramah is according to Mechaber, this applies even if it's a ziz less than a tefach, that you could, according to the Mechaber, does not make that differentiation of ziz less than a tefach or more than a tefach. Rather, the Mechaber says even if ziz less than a tefach, if he could be moiche, and if he is moiche, he could prevent the other person from using it. According to the Ramah, it's only talking about a ziz that's more than a tefach. And if there was no mechaber la'alter, or whatever la'alter means, then you could use it. You could use it right away. Now, why does a person, the Baal HaChatzer, have a right to use this ziz which was built by the Baal HaZiz? He made a mechaber, you have no right to use it. That's one thing. I could prevent you from using it. So what gives me the right to use something which you built over there? The Levush explains, very simple. The air is also mine. It's one of the biggest rayas for air rights. If you look in halacha, one of the rayas is from this levush. The air that's going up there is also mine. Not only because if you look in the Shabbos and the Chesed and the Rishus HaYachid ends and Rishus HaRabim ends and Rishus HaYachid, it's also right. Rishus HaRabim ends after 10 tfachim, right? Above that is Mokim Ptur. So you have a Rishus HaYachid, it's a right, but what does it mean that you have a right? So the Levush over here says, the fact is you stuck something into my property, I don't let you use it, but it's in my property now. It's in my property, I have a right to use it.
You said before there was machlokes about where this is. It was next, the Hezbollah was next to the chutzner, or was it in the chutzner itself?
If it's in the chutzner, according here, so the Levush talking about when it's in the chutzner, yeah. If not, nobody can use it. Yeah. Then comes Siv Beis, the Mechaber continues, and he says, if the Baal HaChatzer was not moiche, then the Baal HaZiz could use it miyad, right away, according to the shit of the Mechaber. And the Baal HaZiz creates a chazakeh also right away. And he could prevent the Baal HaChatzer from using the ziz also right away. If you look in the Smeh, Sifkat Gimel right away, it tells you, doesn't mean right away, rega kemembra. I walk in, I install the ziz, and I tell you, oh, you didn't say anything, I'm counting, I'm looking at my watch, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's mine. That's not how it works. Rather, there has to be clear that the nezik is clear to the mazik, that there's going to be a nezik, and he knows about it, and he's not moiche. And there has to be clear with Eidim or with Eidim to a Bezdin or something very strong to Bezdin that there is a hezek, he knew about the hezek, and he was not moiche. Yeah, and if the only exception would be if it's a hezek that which hezek you don't have to bring Eidim that he knew about. If I go and you have a window facing my property, yeah, and I go and I put a wall up in front of your window, or I put a big ziz sticking out in front of your window, and something there, a big one that blocks your sunlight, I don't need any eidim that you knew about the hezek. The fact is, you didn't see sunshine coming in. If you're home, all I need is a raya at your home when I put it up there, and it was daytime. So then you knew that your window was blocked.
You can't put it to your oven.
Huh?
You can't put it up there. It's in your own oven.
Closing a chalain is a shayla. If you're allowed to block somebody else's chalain. Obviously, if the guy's not in town, that's also not a raya. You just have to make sure the guy's in town when you do these things. And according to Mechaber, that's the way the Smeh explains the Mechaber. And the Smeh l'shitasoi, that for a chazakah to occur according to the Mechaber, the mazik has the obligation to prove it. This is where the machlekes Smeh, Nesivis, and Ktos. Who has the obligation and when? The Smeh and Sifkot and Gimel says the mazik has an obligation to cover all his bases, make sure that he knows that the nizak knows about it, and be able to prove that the nizak knew about it and was not moiche. The Ktos takes the totally opposite approach. In Sifkot Nalef, he says the nizak has to bring the proof. The nizak has to bring a proof that he did not know. And therefore, according to the Ktos, according to the way the Ktos understands the Mechaber, if the hezek was for enough time that the nizak could have found out about it, that's already enough. And therefore, if it's 30 seconds, it's not enough. But if it's a couple of days, it should be enough. And the Nesivis and Sifkot and Gimel takes a little bit of a middle approach between the Smeh and the Ktos, a little closer to the Ktos, but but not the same approach as the Ktsas. He says that you need enough time that he should feel the hezek, not just enough time that he should find out about the hezek. Yeah, not enough time that he should find out that having an air conditioner dripping down could create a hezek, but enough time that he should feel the hezek. He's going to be able to say, because according to the Ktsas, I stuck an air conditioner out in my window in the winter, I installed it, it's not dripping anything. I know that I know about the hezek. Yeah, if you're going to take the approach of the dripping, yeah, not the approach of the ziz. You have to take the approach of the dripping. And I wouldn't, but according to the Nesivos, you should feel the hezek. You have to wait till the summer when it starts dripping. And the Bezdin has to have an umdana. There has to be umdana to the Bezdin that he knew that there was enough time, that he would find out about it. And not only that, but the Nesivos comes and adds another element to it. It's not enough there should be a umdana. The mazik has to taina with a body that the nizak knew about the nezik, about the actual nezik, not about the action only, but I knew actual nezik and was not moiche. Like I mentioned before, the Chazon Ish in Baba Basra says it's enough 30 days. That is the shit of... What? Yeah. I don't know if he takes that approach. Whoever has a clear, maybe. He says 30 days is a zman, the time. The Ramah, here is where the Ramah disagrees with the Mechaber. Takes the you need chazak in 3. He says, first of all, Yeshayim, all these chazakas need 3 years. And that means that the owner could be moiched during any time of the 3 years. The Nesivos in Sifkat and Dalet says that for the chazaka to kick in, you don't have to actually use it all the 3 years. Nesivos Lashitase, he holds us lav dafki, you could use it during the 3 years. He says the ziz is there for 3 years. And that is enough to create a chazaka, as opposed to cheskas karkoas, where you have to eat fruits. The fact that I'm going and I'm tending your garden and I'm not eating your fruits, there's not enough to make a chazaka. Even with taina, you also have to have a chazaka of eating the peiros. So why over here by a ziz you don't need the chazaka? The chazaka could only be by the mere fact that the ziz is sticking out over there, and you don't need the chazaka of 3 years of using it. The Sivas and Sifkat Nald explains that the difference is because in the plan, what you're planning on doing is you want to create a change in ownership. You want to transfer ownership. And therefore you have to do an action which shows ownership. What's an action which shows ownership? Eating the fruits. The fact that I am trimming your branches doesn't mean doesn't show that I'm an owner. Sahakal shows either I'm your worker. No, you're going to bring there's a landscaping company to come and take care of your trees. That doesn't mean they're the owners, even though they're doing it for 3 years. They can do it for 10 years, they're still not going to become the owners. But eating fruits shows that you're an owner, benefiting from it. That creates a change of property. But when it comes to the chazak over here of the ziz, of chazak of using, a chazak of damaging, essentially of damaging it, you're not creating any change in ownership. The fact is, the fact that I have a ziz sticking out into your avir does not mean that I'm claiming ownership to your air. It just means that I'm claiming that I have a right to use your air. And for that, it's not, you don't need to actually use it. It's enough that it's present. It's present over there. And if you're going to go back to the previous Nesivos and Sifkat Nagimel, over there he's talking about the obligation of payment for damages, that according to the shit of the Mechaber that you don't need 3 years, but it's machzik la'alter, and the way that the Nesivos takes the approach that we mentioned, that the machzik la'alter according to the Mechaber means that he knows about that he felt the hezek, and he was not moiche about it. Let's say, could he come? Let's say he did not realize the hezek. Could he come afterwards and say, I want you to pay for the hezek that you caused to my property? Why? Because in the beginning I didn't know that there's going to be a hezek coming out. Yeah, over there he says, over there he discusses it, and over there it seems like from the Nesivis, it's along the Nesivis, but it seems like that it depends on how much he knew before. If the damage is clear from the first moment, and you're able to calculate the damage, he could come afterwards and say, and demand the money. Why? He's going to say, I knew there was a damage. I had no problem with you using my property, but not damaging, because it's such a clear damage that I knew I'll come after you. The fact is, I have no problem if you use my property. I have a problem if you damage my property. So you want to make a barbecue on my lawn, that's fine. You're going to fix the damage afterwards. You're going to have to fix the earth afterwards. The same thing as if a person puts a gachelis into somebody else's rishus. But, and I knew you're going to pay me, so I could demand the payment. And the Sivas takes the approach that if the hezek is so clear, and it's clear to quantify it right in the beginning, you could demand it. But if the hezek is not clear, and you can't quantify financially the hezek, that means it's not clear to the mazik or to the nizak that there's going to be a hezek, or how much the hezek is going to actually be, then you have no right to come to him afterwards and say, I want you to pay for the hezek. Because the machzik could come and say, I didn't know that there's going to be a hezek. You also didn't know there's going to be a hezek. But both of us knew that a hezek might happen. If you knew that a hezek might happen, you should have opened your mouth. The fact is, you didn't open your mouth. The fact you didn't open your mouth is a proof that you don't care about it. The potential hezek that might happen. Masha'enkin, if it's a clear hezek, I can't assume, the machzik can't assume that the other person is ready to waive the hezek. Forget. He has to assume that he knows the mazik sees the hezek. He's going to send him a bill afterwards. Sometimes you walk into places and you have, it's like you buy stuff, you're in a hotel and there's a fridge over there, you could take a soda out and they'll send you a bill afterwards. You can't say that because they left the sodas in the hotel is because they had in mind, even if there's no price tag over there, love dafka, because a price tag, but let's say it isn't. That is free. The fact is it's there, and you're obviously using something that belongs to you. You're going to get a bill afterwards. And the Sivis also adds over there, then what happens if the nizak is the one that comes and offers the mazik? Comes, the nizak comes, it means the Baal HaChatzer comes and tells the Baal Aziz, I see that you're looking to install air conditioners. The wall that's facing my property is empty. The wall that's facing on the other side has windows. You're going to have a hard time installing your split units on that side and install them on my side. Then the Siva says, even there also, the fact that I approached you knowing that there's going to be a hezek, if I approach you with the intention, I'm going to charge you for it afterwards. Because it's clear, but not if he started beforehand. But then he adds, it's only all according to the mechaber where the chazak is la'alter. But if it's for 3 years, you can't say, I could have known about the hezek, I didn't know about the hezek, I should have thought about the hezek, I'm going to charge you money. No. If you follow the shit of the Ramah, that it's 3 years, the Siva says all these claims go by the wayside. You can't charge him for anything, you had enough time to be moiche. The fact is you were not moiche, means you knew about the hezek, you didn't care about the hezek, you never sent him a bill for the hezek. That means you clearly agreed that there's going to be a hezek, you clearly agree that your property is going to be used, you didn't care about it, and therefore you have no right not to block him any further and not to send him a bill. Not to send him a bill. There's an interesting Minchas Pitim in סימן Reish Mem Vav, where he says that he's talking to the Nizak. He says over there to the Nizak, if you in your mind had in mind, your kavanah was not to charge him any money for this hezek, you should not charge him any money. Klap Shema, you should not charge him anything, even if you have a good teretz. That's the first point that this is all first point of the Ramah about that you need to have a gimel shanim. Yeah. Now let's move on to the next point. Not only do you need gimel shanim, the Ramah says also you have to come with a taina, and the Ramah adds crucial words: k'moi becheskas karka, just like by karkois. comes in the Sivis in Siman Kuf Nun Hey, Sivkot and Chaf, where he writes one way, contradicts himself in another place. First start where he writes over there because he's medayik from the lashon of the Ramah. He says the fact that Ramah writes K'moi b'cheskas karka, that means that a taina has to be exactly the same as a taina you do by karkois. What's a taina that's valid by karkois? Mecher with a star kinyan chazaka, with a star kinyan, matana with a star kinyan, or mechila with a kinyan. But if the taina is mechila without a kinyan, by karka it's not moyel. Therefore, over here also, since the Rama adds the words "k'may b'cheskas karka," obviously over here also it's not moyel. Why is that? It's not moyel. That's how he understands the Rama. Problem is that this does not fit with all the Rishonim from which the Rama is based on, because all those Rishonim that the Rama is based on are all saying that tainas mechila without a kinyan does work. The Taz and Tzmeh and Siman Kuf Nun Hey Sif Zayin clearly spell it out. And in the Sivis, in Siman Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Zayin, Siman Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Zayin, the Taz and the Tzmeh spell it out clearly. And in the Sivis himself, in Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Zayin, quotes this Tzmeh without giving any comment on it. That means that a tainas mechila without a kinyan does work.
He also says only mechira and matana.
He doesn't mention mechila.
He says mechila does not work. But only mechira and matana.
For what? For this?
Right again.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but according to those Rishonim, it's fine. And the Sivis contradicts himself in these places. Now, does being quiet enough of a raya for mechila? We mentioned in the beginning that it's not.